Baker Botts, LLP, provides podcasts for educational purposes only. They are not legal advice and are not intended to establish an attorney client relationship. This communication may constitute attorney advertising.
Welcome to AI Council Code. The AI Council Code is here to keep you up to date on all AI legal issues arising in the modern business frontier. I'm your host, Maggie Welsh. Last year in 2024, we discussed a number of legal issues in the AI space, from corporate governance, IP, employment law, and regulatory guidelines. To kick off 2025, Parker Hancock is back with us today to share some of his thoughts on what to expect with AI this year. So, Parker, let's start with the tech. DeepSeek is all over the news and provided staggering breakthroughs by reducing the cost of training a model without sacrificing any performance. So, what can we expect in 2025 in terms of AI tech advances?
Yeah, so I think there's really three areas to keep an eye on. The first one that has been almost equally in the news alongside DeepSeek is the idea of test time compute or reasoning models. This is the idea, and we've known this for a while, that if you, for example, tell an AI model to think step by step or spend a little bit more time thinking, you get better results. This is a breakthrough in performance by essentially providing some structure for what that thinking process looks like and applying some additional techniques to improve the thought process. The other one that you mentioned is DeepSeek, which has been in the news. And for that one, really what we're looking at is a big efficiency gain. So the DeepSeek models are not huge uplifts in performance, but what they do allow you to do is to get more performance for less money spent. And that is a big deal. So while I think a lot of the news has been hyperbolic, there are real breakthroughs in terms of being more efficient with the hardware you have. And what we're seeing that do is unlocking the AI game to a lot more players. It used to be the case that you needed massive capital investments to really do any meaningful AI research. But now it could be plausible to do it for on the order of tens of millions rather than hundreds of millions, which is still expensive, but that still opens the market up to a lot of other players. And the last thing that I would note that kind of ties into all of this and the maturing of the technology generally is we're seeing just massive investments in new infrastructure to support AI. Just in the last month, we've seen the announcement of almost $600 billion in investment over the next 5 years or so in data centers across the country that will include hardware to run AI. And in fact, they announced that they're going to restart the Three Mile Island nuclear plant specifically to power data centers that are doing AI. So the tech front is incredibly vibrant, lots of things going on.
Thanks, Parker. That's interesting. Why do you think companies are racing forward to invest in AI development? Have you seen an overarching theme there?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest paradigm shifts that we see both in the tech and the law from 2024 to 2025. So the founders of a lot of the AI companies believe in an idea called artificial general intelligence, which is hard to define, but basically the idea that you could make an AI system that is as good at doing things that humans can to some degree. Which humans you're talking about is a little bit unclear. But maybe what is clear is that what they're really trying to get to is an AI system that can improve itself. That is, if we can get to AI systems that are powerful enough to write their own code, do their own research, at that point, the power of AI systems would really only be limited by how much compute and how much power you can feed them. And now that sounds like science fiction. And 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, yes, that is absolutely science fiction. But a lot of the recent developments have indicated that that might be possible. And what we're seeing then is because a lot of people are coming around to this realization, it's kicking off something that looks like the space race. There is a global race underway in order to build these kinds of very powerful AI systems to solve everything from drug development, advanced engineering problems, but also there's military applications. And so just like the space race back in the 60s, there are geopolitical pressures that come with it. And I think that's really underlying a lot of the dynamic we're seeing from 2024 to 2025. Now, as lawyers and as businesses that are looking at AI and trying to find ways to improve our business, that is a huge opportunity. Even if we're not necessarily there yet, there's still a lot of technologies that we can drive a lot of value from in the meantime.
How close are we to reaching that artificial general intelligence, or even better yet, the self-improving systems?
So we're not that close, and it's a fascinating dynamic as to why. We're seeing a two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, in test style benchmarks, so where you give an AI system a test like you would like the bar exam or the SAT or a final exam in a graduate level class, we're reaching the point where there's virtually no test that AI systems can't perform equally as well or occasionally better than humans at. But at the same time, if you look at the sort of like open domain tasks, doing internet research, doing software development, the kinds of things that you and I might do at our daily jobs, reading reports, that kind of thing, AI systems really seem to struggle. And one additional theme on the tech is what's been called agentic technology, which is trying to teach AI systems to do these more open world, realistic, productive tasks in a more general way. And we have a long way to go on that.
Thanks, Parker. That's helpful to understand where the technology stands. So let's talk about regulation. The EU AI Act is starting to roll out. So, what does 2025 look like for AI regulation in the EU and then here in the US as well?
I think with the shift from a more careful approach to AI to a more competition focused approach, we're really seeing that affect how regulations are rolling out. So, as a mental model, you can think of AI regulations as falling into kind of three categories. The first category is regulating AI, so development regulations, transparency around training data, how you do testing, how you do adversarial red teaming, that kind of thing. A second category is field of use regulations. So that is regulations about what general applications you can apply AI to. That's similar to the EU AI Act's general approach to regulation. And then third is AI application regulations. So that's how AI is used for very specific things like making a decision about whether someone gets a loan, making a decision as to whether someone gets a promotion. So at the point of contact between AI and the real world. Before 2025, most regulators were focused on general AI development and field of use regulations. But because of concerns that that may be hampering innovation and creating geopolitical risk, I think a lot of the focus has moved to AI application regulations, really looking at that point where AI interacts with the real world.
So, what does that mean for the EU AI Act then?
I think you can see this highlighted most clearly in a recent guidance document the EU put out defining what prohibited uses of AI are. In the EU AI Act, there's a list of prohibited uses that it doesn't matter what you do, you cannot use AI for. And in that guidance document, there was an opportunity to construe those very broadly or narrowly. And pretty consistently throughout that document, they're construed much more narrowly than they could otherwise be. Trying to read between the lines, this is the first major guidance document issued under the EU AI Act. And if that trend continues, I think we will see the EU AI Act interpreted in such a way to try not to step on innovation and to provide opportunities for more development.
That there has been some state regulations. What are you seeing in the US or what do you expect to see in 2025?
Sure. So over the last year, we have seen a constellation of regulations in that third category at the point of application of AI to the real world, focusing on things like deepfakes, political speech imitating real people, those sorts of very specific things. Another big one is when humans are interacting with an AI, making clear that you're interacting with an AI. Um, those sorts of things, there's we don't have time to go through all of them. There's a lot of them. Nearly every state is adopting some form of them. Of particular note, California is still working through a process to issue a regulation on automated decision-making technologies, which is broader than AI, but would include various AI applications. That's a regulation they're issuing under the California Privacy Rights Act, which is a privacy law rather than an AI law, but that is definitely something to watch. The one state that has taken a more comprehensive approach to AI regulation is Colorado, which adopted sort of an baby EU AI Act style regulation. But even with that one, it won't enter into force until February of 2026. So there's still a lot of time to see how that law is going to be interpreted and how it's going to be applied. And I have some suspicion it may follow the lead of its parent act in the EU. And the final thing I'll note, Texas is also considering a comprehensive AI regulation similar to Colorado's law, but it's unclear how serious of a proposal that is. So we are certainly keeping an eye on it, but unclear whether that moves into law.
Thanks, Parker. And I know you're well aware there's updates every week on AI regulation in the US and new proposals that are out there. So, like you said, something to keep an eye on for sure. So, given all these changes, what advice would you give to companies who might want to use AI in their business or roll out an AI product?
So the good news is the general regulatory environment looks like it's improving for doing things with AI, especially in-house and in the development context. I think the big concern there, aside from if you're working in the EU or a place that has a comprehensive law, is copyright issues, which remain unresolved. We may see some of the first copyright cases come to at least a trial court decision in 2025. So that's to look out for in development. But really, the focus needs to be on that point of application between AI and the real world. And with that, I think things are getting more complicated. There's going to be more states to address. And most of this is state by state. There are very few national laws. I will also just include as a reminder that at that point of application of AI to the real world, all other applicable law continues to apply. So FTC regulation, equal right, Title VII, all the laws that would otherwise apply to a human performing a task also apply to AI performing a task. So all of that is to keep in mind at that point of application. And I would say, just as a closing point, things in AI are only speeding up, and that appears to be true both on the technology and the law side. So if this is an area where you practice, continuing to stay current is going to be a challenge for the foreseeable future, but also so important. Just to underline, in this shift to a competition mode, we're only going to see more AI technology come out, more potential harms associated with it, and more regulation to try and mitigate those harms.
All right. Thank you, Parker. Lots of things to watch for and to be mindful of in 2025. So thanks for being with us today. And thank you all for listening to AI Council Code. We're so glad that you joined us today. Stay tuned for additional podcasts and more insights on AI legal issues.
Thank you for listening to this BakerBots podcast. BakerBots has the experience, knowledge, and people to address our clients' most significant legal issues. For more information on BakerBots practices, please visit us at bakerbots.com. This presentation is provided by BakerBots LLP for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship. Under the rules of certain jurisdictions, this communication may constitute attorney advertising.